Jesus here in declaring that I am the light of the world. And it's one of those, just like the other I am sayings of Jesus, pretty controversial for that time, especially for the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, and how they challenged Jesus and they questioned him. How can you say these things? How can any human say these things? And one of the things that we are able to take away is that there's so much darkness in the world. There's so much darkness that is taking place, whether it's what we watch on the news, or whether what goes on around us, or whether what goes on with relatives, or places where we work, or places that we just visit, that there is darkness out there. And we have to show and reveal how Christ is the light of the world. Jesus declared how he is the light of the world. And this is the messianic statement, as Jesus was providing his testimony of who he is and declaring his deity, but not outright declaring his deity. But if you read very carefully, you can see how Jesus is saying he came from the Father. He is invoking the name of the Father by saying, well, I provide the testimony, and the Father is also a witness of my testimony. Because the Pharisees were challenging him that, well, we can only believe the testimony of two witnesses. And Jesus is like, well, you do have two witnesses, me and the Father. So all these statements and all these sayings that Jesus was saying, he was really declaring that he is the Messiah without really outright saying it, which I'm sure threw the Pharisees off even more and annoyed them even more. But Jesus, he did declare here that he is the light of the world. No other prophet or teacher of the law was able to make such a claim. But Jesus declared it here because, well, he knows he is the Son of God. He is the one who came from the Father. Jesus is the light because he is the Son of God. He is the chosen one to bring the light to the people. The people of Jesus' time did not know that they were in darkness. Just like how many people today out there, they don't know that they are in darkness. Especially the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who thought that they were in the light, who thought that they knew everything, who thought that they had it all, spiritually speaking. But it was Jesus who was to illuminate the people of that time of the truth of Jesus being the Son of God, about how he is the light of the world. Jesus had to bring light to all the world. Now, here to provide some more background, it says here that I am the light of the world. In that phrase where the division among the Jews was due to blindness, and Jesus declared that he is the light of which life is the source, and which shines on the way to a fuller experience of God. There's no way to have a fuller experience of God than through Jesus Christ. He is the light that shines in that way, in which people are able to have that full experience with God. It says here, in the beginning, God manifested himself by bringing of the light in Genesis 1:2 in the creation. The Feast of Tabernacles as well brought remembrance to God's heavenly guidance of Israel by the fiery pillar, and the ceremony of lights as well, which was performed and provided illumination throughout the temple. God was always the source of light for the people of Israel. Not just that God created the light in Genesis, but also when God was leading the people out of Egypt and through the wilderness, he was that pillar of light for them as well. It says here that darkness is where God is unknown. God does not know anything about darkness. Where there is darkness, the presence of God is not there. It is unknown. It says, he who follows Jesus emerges from the chaotic darkness like the world in the beginning and is brought to the light. See, the Pharisees here, they challenged Jesus like they usually did. And the passage of Scripture here was in the middle of a discourse that Jesus was giving about who he is, because he was constantly being questioned. He was constantly being asked, because every miracle that he performed, anything that he said, anything that he did, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious teachers of the law, they were there challenging Jesus and saying, how can you say these things? How can you do these things? How can you forgive so-and-so? How can you heal this person? Or how can you declare these things? And Jesus was willing to provide and to give his testimony, was willing to give this discourse here. You see, if you look at the context of this passage of Scripture, this was after Jesus forgave the woman who was caught in adultery, showing how he is the light of the world, showing how those who picked up the stones ready to stone her, they themselves had sin in their lives. They were not perfect. He who was perfect was to be the first one to cast the stone. But yet no one did. They dropped their stones and they left. And Jesus forgave that woman who was caught in adultery.